Hey, what's up? It's me. I'm back on Tuesday. Was out last week in New Orleans, but I'm back, and this is gonna have to be a very quick video because I have some stuff I have to get to tonight. But um, looks like you guys are doing the game art assignment that I started I think this document last year, and that's exciting. It's a really fast assignment, really sort of high pressure. So that's interesting, but it's really short too. So hopefully you guys can get through it without too much trouble. Yes, I think I'm just gonna run through all of these. It looked like they're all on time, and a lot of them are looking super cool. So this one, the coffee maker, I think is well modeled from what I can tell. It's in Unreal. That's rad. Let me see. I'm gonna take 1 second to open it up because I have one thing I wanted to point out. All right, yeah. So looking at this, I think the modeling looks pretty good. My one piece of feedback, like I was gonna say, was just the scale and whatnot is very. I think it looks very literal right now. It looks like you're basically making the thing as shown in the picture, which is fine for like a more realistic game. For Overwatch, it's totally cool to sort of let me see, to sort of start pushing shapes, the size of shapes. You could make these like, as an example, you could make these bigger. I'm doing this super messy, but you could start making details bigger so that they read, at the scale they are in Overwatch. Maybe this is something you want to do after you finish your bakes and materials, but you could start like, wonking them up and down or around so that they're not all straight. That's something that could potentially make it look a little bit more charming. You could do similar scale stuff. I think with all of these, they're all kind of, again, I know this is like their realistic size, but for Overwatch, I would expect to see something more like, with big sort of almost like friendly looking details where they're not too small, not too detailed. And this would require more care and attention than I'm giving it right now. You'd want to make sure everything is like not sticking out too far and stuff like that. But I would say like look for opportunities to sort of make the details more like poofy and friendly, and that's sort of the Overwatch thing. I think if I remember right, you're doing Overwatch. I'm pretty sure, yeah. But other than that, I mean, modeling looks pretty good. For a game res asset this size, if this was a normal game asset, you probably wouldn't need as many bevels as you have. But if it's like a hero asset that's going to be up close, then I think this is totally fine. So nice work. This is well done. All right, so the fire pit. Taking a look, I don't remember. Okay, this is your style guide. All right. So God of War is pretty realistic, and I would say, looking at your main reference here, your proportions on your model are not very close to the reference. So unless you're making a like an intentional choice to change it, I would say like the top disc thing on yours looks much smaller, and on the reference it's very wide and sticks out very far, and it's also got a lot of like individual tiles or blocks or pieces that compose the top part. So there's, I think, in addition to your low poly, it looks like there's a lot of work that needs to still happen on the high poly in terms of making all those tiles. There's also details elsewhere. Let me grab a screen grab and try to draw on it here. Like all this stuff, you want to make that somehow. You want to make the change the color. If you look at the legs, there's like a trim on the sides of the legs, which is really nice. I'd want to see that, hopefully. And like I was saying, the sort of try to figure out, if you can get a higher angle reference so you can see this stuff a little bit better, that might be useful. Trim in here, all that stuff you want to get into the high poly, because God of War is all about getting all that fine detail and making stuff look sort of expensive, like a ancient treasure and stuff. But it's getting there. Let me see. Yeah, your low poly looks like not quite a low poly yet, like you said in your notes, so that's fine. But I would if you haven't already gone and taken a look at this video in my series from last year, the high and low poly demo, it's important to recognize that like your low poly is not going to just be your lowest subdivision level in ZBrush. The low poly is like a separate model that you make, separately as its own thing. And it could be based on some of your base meshes, but it really needs to have, a low poly model needs to have its own sort of, it has its own set of needs and requirements as far as the topology. So usually you want to sort of, redo most of it as, new geometry that captures the silhouette, and not the fine detail. So if you haven't already watched this video, definitely go ahead and check that out. I'll make sure I put the link to this video in the description for the one I'm recording right now, in case. And then I think this applies to some of the other ones I saw where they need to have sort of more of a attention given to the low poly. But yeah, it's on the right track, I think. Just keep going. It's just got more time on it that needs to happen, but yeah, nice work. Okay, the axe. I saw your note about booleans. I would say you don't need to use boolean for something like this, because it's all basically flat. You can just model, do another screen grab. You can just model these shapes out as a 2D plane and then just extrude it. And you can figure out the topology on your 2D plane, and once you extrude it, it's just going to do the rest of it for you. So I don't think there's any need to do a Boolean operation with these circles, for what it's worth. I think that would probably give you a much cleaner and easier result. The one thing I was going to say about this is your drawing here doesn't really let me give you a different color pen, maybe make it bigger. Yeah, all right. So the handle, I'm looking at the handle on the drawing, and it's not very clear like what the cross section of this shape is. Right here in this drawing, it looks completely flat, which would make me imagine that maybe it's like a rectangle cross section. But then in your model, you have it as a cylinder, or at least like a flattened oblong cylinder. So that's the type of thing that you want to sort of resolve design-wise. Is this going to be square, or is it going to be a cylinder? And if it's going to be a cylinder, then like what does all this detailing look like in 3D, in 3 dimensions, because I think some of this it's leaving work for you to do during modeling that will be difficult for you to solve and figure out, which is, it's okay. I mean, sometimes as a modeler, you have to figure that stuff out, but it can help to sort of plan it out beforehand. So I would say, like, try to figure out what is happening in 3D space as far as all this handle and the detail stuff goes. So yeah, but I mean, overall, you've got the shapes right. It's coming along. So yeah, keep going. It's looking good. Okay, this helmet is super cool. I'm really into it. I appreciate the pivot from last week's Assassin's Creed helmet, and this is a really awesome reference. It looks like you have obviously work to do to catch up and get the low poly and bakes and stuff in on time. Maybe you want to spend more time on it, probably, but I think it's a cool reference, and you're headed in the right direction with the sculpt. I think if you're able to give this the time that it needs to get a good result, it's going to turn out super good. So yeah, I don't have much to say about it. It's what's there is good, and I really like your choice of concept. So yeah, keep going. All right, the flamethrower. Okay, so I didn't read this before actually. Ball pieces. Why did I drink before I did this? Sorry. Anyway, yes, looks good. I would say. What I was thinking, it's cool to see it in Unreal. Sorry, I can't read, but let me see. The one thing I was going to say about what I'm seeing here now is just. I think this is something I mentioned in some of the other models, but like looking at the handle in particular, you have all these like grooves, right? And if this is going to be your low poly, these, you don't really need these, I don't think. I don't think they're going to make a difference in what you see once you have textures on there. You know, they're, especially a normal map, like these aren't going to be visible geometry. So they're sort of a waste of polygons, but obviously you'd want to have something like that modeled out in your high poly. So maybe you're just getting ready and you're going to take those out for the low poly and use them in the high poly. I don't really know. But anyway, I would say, yeah, for your low poly, you don't necessarily need some of these really shallow grooves. Like this button here, that's fine. I would keep that. But the other thing related to that, the other side of that coin, is if I grab this side, this angle, like looking at this here, it's very faceted, you know, and for this level of detail, you want to get a much smoother curve. And maybe the same goes for this part. I don't know. I think definitely the same for the handle. Like think about capturing those silhouettes and budgeting less polys for, you know, details like this and more polys for your silhouette, because the silhouette is what really matters in a game res model, because the normal maps are going to take care of most of the other details. So I would say try to make sure that you have enough faces to get a good silhouette, and don't worry too much about sort of the internal detail on the surface of the model. But again, like maybe this is an unfinished low poly and you're going to use some of that. Maybe this is like a block out, because I think this is fine for a block out. Yeah. But overall, like I think it's looking very good. I like the level of detail here. I like the wire or whatever this is going in. All the stuff seems pretty well built out, which is cool. I'm gonna make another attempt at reading this. Sorry, I've made a terrible mistake. Okay, yeah, I got you. I think it's that makes a lot of sense. I think making sure you have sort of the plastic pieces separated out does make sense. Like I was saying, for the low for your final optimized low poly, you could probably leave out you know, the indentations on here. I understand probably you're trying to capture like these seams and stuff, but definitely do that in the high poly and whatnot. But probably for the low poly, you know, you could have an edge here that holds that shape, but not necessarily like all the stuff you had in there. But really, that's not as important as just making sure you have enough faces for the silhouette. For something like high detail for a AAA asset, you could probably even add enough edges if you wanted to get like this ribbing on the handle or something. So yeah, think about that. Think about opportunities to get silhouette detail, or you know, you could probably do these bolt holes if you didn't already. I didn't check, but let me see. Oh no, I'm lost. There we go. It looks like you have them sticking out here. Maybe that's what you said in your notes. Yes. Got it. Okay. Yes. You're on the right track then. Cool. Yeah, I will move on. This is looking good. Nice work. All right, so this stone lantern overall is looking good. I saw you had an issue with the topology and the edge bevels. That is because of your topology here. This is not correct topology. You would want to bevel every edge that's going to be hard in ZBrush. Otherwise, it's going to get smoothed out, you know? So the fact that this bevel doesn't extend up here, that's the reason why you're getting those you know, those shapes here, I think. Assuming I'm understanding this correctly. It looks recede, yeah. Yeah, I think that's just the topology. So you can adjust that and get a better smoothing result, I think, in ZBrush. But as for the model, I like the topology overall. It's looking good. Apart from that one thing you mentioned, I think that is happening in a bunch of places, like here and even down on the feet a little bit. So if you can get that resolved, I think it'll be fine. Obviously, it's a pretty simple model, which is good for this sort of time frame. I think you're not going to have a ton of time to work on this. I don't know about how this looks. It looks kind of not finished up on top. Go back and look at the reference. Yeah, I mean, looking at these, it looks like there's definitely more, like, more of a hard edge underneath that top piece on all of them. So definitely, yeah, keep going and making sure you you refine all those shapes to the full extent before you finish out the high poly. But yeah, overall, like, I like the shape. It's appealing. I think it's got a good sort of toony proportions to it. So yeah, good work. Okay, so the well I think is cool. You will want to for your low poly, once you've finished out the sculpt, you want to go back in and make sure, I think for something like this, that you get some of these chips and stuff are definitely enough, like here and here could be enough to sort of break the silhouette of the model. So you want to make sure that you go back into your low poly and model those out so that they capture the whole shape effectively. As far as the low poly where it is now, I feel like I'm confused about the UVs because they look like they're using the space really poorly. And I don't know if you have another part of this model that you're intending to fill all the space with, but definitely, like, this could be a lot better, assuming that there's nothing else to go here. So I would try to improve the UV layout, like for something like this. Like, I'm not sure what that is. Let me see. Yeah, I actually, okay, so I would go back to you should go back and watch the Fundamentals of Perfect Baking video that I linked a while ago, because you don't want to have your UVs like this for a low poly. You want to have, if you have a hard edge here, you want it to be a separate UV island. So you don't want this attached at all. And also, like I said for the other one, like these types of bevels, these types of tiny bevels are not good for a game res mesh. You don't need them. They're going to be, you know, your normal map is going to be doing that kind of work for you. So unless it's a really, really high res up close prop, you're not going to need that. But, oh boy. I'm not sure. It looks like there's some crazy stuff going on here. Maybe this just isn't finished and I'm messing with something that I shouldn't be touching. But like basically all the sides of this leg don't need to be attached to the center piece. Like you'd never want to have them like that. But if you are able to separate them all out, then you'll be able to, like, you know, lay this UV out a lot more efficiently, and you won't have as much unused space. So hopefully that will help. But yeah, I think the sculpt, as far as it's gotten, is looking good, but I would say the low poly, going back to, you know, my my other video, like, you definitely want to go in and do a real, like, game res low poly for this before you bake everything down. But design is good. I would say I feel like this could be more funked up, you know? I wouldn't expect all these tiles to be perfectly aligned and the same size for something as toony as this. Like, you'd want to start adding, like, fun gesture and movement to something like this. I think that will really add way more life to this piece. Maybe that's something, like I said for the other one, maybe you don't want to do that until you've got your bakes out and finished, which is completely valid. But it's just something to keep in mind, you know. Think about, you know, do you want to arc it a little bit? And that goes for these especially. I think these are looking very very sort of dead right now, and there's a lot you can do to add sort of excitement to these, especially in terms of just rotating the meshes a little bit. It looks like you're doing a bit of scaling already, which is good, but yeah, you can just keep pushing that stuff. You know, for stuff like this, obviously the you know, the lattice can do a lot for you. You know, I don't know, there's there's a lot you can do for all this types of stuff, just to make it a little more exciting to look at for a toony style. But you know, overall, I think you've got all the pieces in. It's a good first step. So nice work. All right, diving helmet is looking super cool. The high poly is very well detailed and well done. I would say it's nice work. From what I remember from the character assignment, I think your low poly didn't really ever sort of measure up to the sculpt you did, and so that's something I would keep sort of an eye out for this time around, because like looking at this low poly, this is just not really cutting it as a low poly. You know, once again, go back and watch this lecture because you want to make sure that you're doing a low poly sculpt that works as a game mesh and is also paying attention to silhouette and curves and stuff, like something I was saying for Callum's. But you know, this curve is just that's not enough triangles for something like that. You know, you need more. A lot of these pieces, you know, it's okay to have them as interpenetrating meshes, but you know, sometimes it can be better to do that. But when you have opportunities to have things that are more watertight, that can also be good. So look for opportunities to do that where it's not gonna create a ton of extra geometry for you. But the big one I think would be just efficiency. You know, you have a bunch of edge loops here that aren't really doing anything for you. And then, like I said, not enough down here. Yeah, just work on the low poly. I think that's going to be the majority of what needs to happen on this. There's probably more sculpting detail you can do to get sort of the dingy or the, you know, the dinged up, damaged appeal of that reference. But your base here, I think, is really well observed. You've got really good detailing on the shapes and forms that are represented here. So that's a really good start. All right, yeah, looking at this again, I think this isn't really a low poly. You have all these edge loops. You know, this looks like a high poly that's just not smooth, which is not what you want to use for a game. All this stuff you don't need. That can go in the normal map for the most part. Yeah, once again, check out this lecture where I explain like how you retopologize something for a game, because I think this is not, it just doesn't look like you've done the low poly yet, I would say. Because, you know, this doesn't need even bevels. I think bevels this tiny you wouldn't want to see. But, you know, I think the shape is cool, assuming it's matching the reference. But yeah, for turning stuff in on drive, like starting next week, I'm just going to go back to ignoring stuff like this, because like you have to show some attention to just turning in things correctly, because this is not sufficient. Lastly, the statue. Okay, starting a new piece. This is super interesting. I really like this this reference. It's super wild. I would say I appreciate your optimism in wanting to catch up on this by Friday, but I don't think I would be able to do this in the rest of the week probably. So I would not underestimate the amount of detail and stuff that's happening here, because there's a ton of really cool stuff, and I think that if you are able to get like a really good representation of all this detail, it would be a great piece. So maybe if you can spend more time on it, then that would be better. In my opinion, like getting all the paneling, you know, the way that these, I don't know what these are, these orbs, but the way that they're popping out from like a, just draw on it again. Like the way this is like a separate piece is really interesting. Obviously all this stuff, there's a lot to do. So, yeah, I would, yeah, keep going. I think, what you have so far is looking pretty good. So not much to say except, yeah, don't underestimate this task, but also like, it's definitely worth doing all this detail. I think it'll look super cool, if you're able to get it all resolved. So yeah, cool. Excited to see what happens next. Yeah, so that's everybody. I just want to come back to this video real quick. I hope everybody's watched it. If not, I hope everybody watches it by Friday, because I think I didn't really see a lot of examples of really good game topology of any of the low polys so far. So I think that would be really good to see for a game assignment. You know, I explain in pretty good detail, I think, how you want to approach something like this and set it up for a good bake for a game. You know, the baking and retopology is a much more important and difficult part of this process for a game res mesh than it is for the characters or you know, stuff like that, where you're not necessarily trying to optimize it for performance. So please pay attention to this stuff. It's going to be important for getting a good result. And you know, I also talk about these same sort of principles in the feedback videos for for the guys from last year. So if you have time to watch through these hour-long feedback videos for other people's work, they might give you a better idea of what you want to be doing for something like this. But yeah, I'm excited to see what you have on Friday and next week. So good luck, everybody.